When my days are done around here, the whole world will acknowledge me.
Roman Reigns' words capture his unforgettable legacy. With a record-breaking 1,316 days as champion, Roman has cemented his place as arguably the greatest champion in WWE history. With the Usos, Paul Heyman, and Solo Sikoa by his side, the Bloodline became an unstoppable force, delivering iconic moments and crafting one of WWE's longest-running and most celebrated storylines. It's safe to say there is no modern Renaissance era in WWE without the Bloodline. However, after Roman's shocking defeat by the hands of Cody Rhodes at WrestleMania, many fans feel the story has lost its edge. The return of the OG Bloodline, now featuring Sami Zayn, has been criticized for being rushed and inconsistent, leaving fans wondering, has the Bloodline story already peaked? Let's dive deep into the highs, the lows, and its lasting impact on the wrestling world before asking the ultimate question, has the Bloodline overstayed its welcome? Section 1. The Rise of the Bloodline. The Bloodline storyline began in 2020, marking one of the most significant turning points in WWE history. It all started with what is arguably one of the greatest heel turns in wrestling, a moment that sent shockwaves through the WWE universe. Roman Reigns aligned with Paul Heyman, embracing his tribal chief persona. This transformation didn't just rejuvenate his career, it established him as the face of WWE's new era. Adding the Usos to the mix brought depth to an already compelling narrative. The story's emotional core was Jey Uso, who transitioned from Roman's reluctant rival to his loyal right-hand man. Their feud in 2020 was nothing short of a masterpiece, delivering raw emotion and brutal in-ring action. Jey's struggles to both defy and support Roman resonated with fans, creating an emotional backbone that carried the storyline forward. Then came Sami Zayn. Initially seen as comic relief, Sami's inclusion added an entirely new layer of complexity. His humor, heart, and eventual betrayal of Roman at the Royal Rumble turned the storyline into absolute cinema. Sami's desperate attempts to earn the Bloodline's approval, followed by his ultimate rejection, were some of the most memorable moments in modern WWE. For nearly 3 years, the Bloodline dominated WWE programming. They headlined every major event, won nearly every championship, and redefined the art of wrestling storytelling. Roman's reign became synonymous with excellence, and the Bloodline's rise solidified itself as one of WWE's greatest achievements. Section 2. Signs of fatigue. But no story can remain perfect forever. After WrestleMania 39, where Cody Rhodes exposed the first cracks in the Bloodline, fans began noticing repetitive patterns. The betrayals, reconciliations, and familiar promos that once felt fresh began to feel predictable. The reintroduction of the OG Bloodline, featuring Sami Zayn and Jey Uso, was meant to reignite fan interest. However, it had the opposite effect for many. Sami and Jey, both of whom had legitimate grudges against Roman, were inexplicably reunited with him without explanation or apology. Fans were left scratching their heads, wondering why WWE ignored months of carefully built tension. For example, Sami Zayn, who was brutally humiliated and cast out by Roman, suddenly seemed willing to align with him again. Similarly, Jey Uso's unresolved tensions with Roman and Jimmy were pushed aside, leaving a gaping hole in the narrative. These rushed reunions not only felt unearned, but also betrayed the emotional investment fans had poured into the story for years. Section 3. The impact of the Bloodline. Despite its current struggles, there's no denying the impact the Bloodline has had on WWE. This faction didn't just elevate Roman Reigns, it revitalized the entire WWE product. Under Roman's leadership, SmackDown became must-watch television. The Usos, once overshadowed by other teams, cemented themselves as one of the most dominant tag teams in WWE history. Solo Sikoa, the enforcer of the group, emerged as a compelling heel, and Paul Heyman once again proved why he's one of the greatest managers of all time. The storyline also reignited the importance of factions in WWE. It showed how a well-crafted narrative could dominate an era, drawing in lapsed fans and creating buzz that extended far beyond the wrestling world. But this dominance came at a cost. WWE's reliance on the Bloodline often sidelined other talents who deserved the spotlight. At Bad Blood 2024, for instance, the feud between CM Punk and Drew McIntyre had all the makings of a classic main event. Yet the Bloodline storyline once again took center stage, leaving many fans feeling frustrated. Section 4. The Fall of the Bloodline. Today, the Bloodline feels like a shadow of its former self. WWE seems to be relying too heavily on past successes, recycling old tropes instead of innovating. The story, which once captivated audiences with its emotional depth and unpredictability, now feels hollow and uninspired. The rushed reunions, especially Sami Zayn's and Jey Uso's involvement in the War Games match, felt forced. Jimmy Uso's sudden mistrust of Sami and Seth Rollins' willingness to align with Roman lacked the nuance and build-up fans had come to expect. On paper, the original Bloodline reunion sounded like a brilliant idea, but in execution, it has failed to recapture the magic of the storyline's peak. The stakes aren't as high, and the emotional weight that once defined the Bloodline is missing. Fans who once praised the storyline for its complexity now criticize it for its lack of direction. Has the Bloodline peaked? It's hard to argue otherwise. The Bloodline's legacy is secure. It elevated Roman Reigns to legendary status, redefined WWE storytelling, and gave us the moments we'll never forget. But sometimes the best way to honor a legacy is to let it end at its peak.